This is the C.A. Seller, Ron Whitehead Gonzo Fest 2018 interview. A little bit about Ron Whitehead. Ron has produced over 2,000 arts events, happenings, and festivals throughout Europe and the USA. He has performed thousands of shows around the world with some of the best musicians and bands on the planet. He recently returned from Scandinavian tour with the French rock band Black Heat, and from 2 New York City trips where his new books, Blistered Asphalt on Dixie Highway, Kentucky Basketball is Poetry in Motion, was released by Finishing Line Press at the Historic Poets House, and Disobey, with his muse, Ginbug, which released by Underground Books at the New York City Folks Festival. Ron's work has been translated into nearly 20 languages. He is the author of 30 books and 40 CDs. His newest books include Mama, A Poet's Heart in a Kentucky Girl, Transmission Press, Indiana, Blistered Asphalt on Dixie Highway, Kentucky Basketball is Poetry in Motion, Finishing Line Press, Kentucky, Quest for Self in the Ocean of Consciousness, Ibsen, Hampson, Munch, and Joyce. The originals of Modernism and Expressionism, Cook Creative, Kentucky. Disobey, Underground Books, New York City, and I'd Never Shoot a Man While He's Washing Dishes. Arcturian Love Songs, Long Steel Rail Press, Kentucky. His 3 newest albums, all 3 with Sonoblast Records, Kentucky, are Prayer with Harry Pickens on piano and Aaron West on violin. The Storm Generation Manifesto is other rock and roll poems, and Dragons, both with Storm Generation Band. Ron, that's something else right there, boy. This will mark the 8th year of Gonzo Festival. Gonzo Fest features poetry, spoken word, art, live music, and more. In 2017, the celebration moved to the Louisville Free Public Library to focus on highlighting the literary side of the festival by expanding its panel discussions, spoken word, and poetry aspects. For those who don't know, what is Gonzo Fest and what are its goals, Ron?
Well, first of all, hello, Charlie. Hello, International Times. Thank you for doing this interview. The Bone Man dances circles round the subterranean gloom, paints pink and blue and purple until he fills the room with the smell of roses and pandemonium. Moon. Hello, everybody. Hello from Kentucky to London and beyond. Gonzo Fest. On December the 12th, 1996, I produced the official Hunter S. Thompson tribute. I brought in Hunter, his mom, Virginia, his son, Juan, Bob Broadus, the sheriff of Pitkin County, who was Hunter's bodyguard, Johnny Depp, Warren Zevon, David Amram, Roxanne Pulitzer, and a host of others for the most amazing 4-hour event of over 2,000 I ever produced. And so, for years, actually a year earlier, 2 years earlier, in 1994, historian Douglas Brinkley, my friend, America's leading historian, and I had a series of conversations. Doug brought a class of students from Hofstra University on Long Island to Louisville, Kentucky on a cross-country trip. He wrote a book called On the Road with the Magic Bus about this class that he taught, cross-country, visiting famous artists, writers, poets, cultural figures, national parks, and he stopped in Louisville, Kentucky to visit Muhammad Ali's home where he grew up, and Hunter S. Thompson's home where he grew up, and to attend a 48-hour non-stop music and poetry insomniac-a-thon I produced. And Doug and I agreed that somebody should celebrate the life and work of native son Hunter S. Thompson in his hometown. And so I started at that time to do that, and 2 years later in '96 I produced the official Hunter tribute, and then that was followed by years of me standing on the street corner preaching with nobody listening, saying, come on, Louisville, let's honor the life and works of Hunter. And then 8 years ago, Hunter died. He shot himself February 20th, 2005, after which I wrote 13 suggestions for Louisville to honor native son Hunter. Then 8 years ago, I got a phone call from my friend Denny Humphrey, who at that time was the owner of his fine drinking and eating establishment and performing establishment, the Monkey Wrench. And Denny said, look, Ron, I want to start a festival honoring the life and works of Hunter in his hometown here in the Highlands, where Hunter grew up. My writing studio here, where this interview is taking place, is on Cherokee Road. Hunter wrote about Cherokee Road. He grew up in this neighborhood near Cherokee Park. He raised hell here. He just wandered the streets and the alleys. And we have recently put up a 40-foot banner on the side of the Bristol Bar and Grill, where I took Hunter and Johnny Depp and Warren Zevon one night in the week that they were all here. Put them up at the Brown Hotel, but would go out to eat every night, and we ate at the Bristol one night. And people kept coming up and asking for autographs from Hunter. And finally, Hunter took his glass of Chivas Regal on the rocks and threw it over his shoulder. And I'm just like, I was praying, please, nobody get hurt, please. I hired 2 limousines and 8 Lincoln Continentals for that week. I lost $50,000 from that event. It cost so much. It was an amazing event. It was packed. But the University of Louisville was supposed to pay for all the production, and they backed out a week before the event because they were afraid the donors wouldn't give anymore because of all the publicity that was coming out about Hunter and drugs and alcohol. And so they backed out, and I got stuck with the whole thing, which is fine. I paid it off a year ago. 21 years later, it's paid off now, so it's good. So where the hell were we? So Denny called me and said he wanted to produce this festival, but I won't do it without your help. And I said, are you kidding me? Let's do it. So on Saturday, April the 14th, the 8th, Gonzo Fest Louisville will take place at the Louisville Free Public Library. And we had it at the Monkey Wrench the first few years. Then in 2014, I got a phone call from a fantastic fellow who is the mayor's. He produces all his special events for the city of Louisville, and the mayor came on board. The city of Louisville came on board in 2014, and that's when we had 6 days and 6 nights in several different venues of Gonzo Fest, and I nearly killed the entire production team from that one. And I said, okay, I don't want you guys to leave. You all take over with the production aspects and keep it to one day. And so they did, and so the mayor came on board. We moved to the waterfront. Gonzo Fest started to grow rapidly now with the city of Louisville backing it. And then we got a new librarian, Jim Blanton. He's fantastic. And I went and had a meeting with him, and I told him, I said, Jim, look, do you realize that this was Hunter's first library, the main library at 4th and York in downtown Louisville? This is where he brought his friends and he had meetings. His mother was a librarian here. When Hunter's dad died, when Hunter was a young man, Virginia had to get work. And so she got a job at the library, became a head librarian, and retired from there. And so I said, Jim, this would be the perfect place for Gonzo Fest. And we need to move this. It's been a music and literature festival, and it's time for it to be a literature with music festival. And Jim his eyes were wide open. He was Google-eyed, and he said, yes, I didn't know all of that. So he started doing research, and he got on board, and now he's totally behind it. And last year, for the first time, we had Gonzo Fest at the library. We had the main stage on the street. We shut down the street outside the old entrance, the main entrance to the library, the Carnegie Library. It's beautiful with the high pillars. And then there's the modern front of the library that was built in the 60s, I believe. And so the inside in the big auditorium, we have panels and speakers and from all over. And like this year, we're going to show The Rise and Fall, the Brown Buffalo, and the director is going to be here. Here you go. Maybe you can see this. I hope you can. Philip Rodriguez. Here's the poster. Is the director is going to be here, and there's going to be a Q&A after the film. Gavi, I probably mispronounced that. I'll find out at Gonzo Fest. The actor from the video, who is also a Louisvillian, is going to be here for the Q&A, and I can't wait to see The Rise and Fall of the Brown Buffalo, the story about the real-life version of Dr. Gonzo, and who disappeared. And there's so much mystery that surrounds his life and his story. An incredible person, the early leader of the Brown rights movement, the Latino rights movement, the movement for equal rights for all brown people. And so that's going to be a central part of Gonzo Fest this year. And so the library is the new home for Gonzo Fest. And there's some incredible stuff going on behind the scenes. And I'll go ahead. I'm not sure when this interview is going to come out. I hope tomorrow, as soon as we do this, as soon as Charlie sends it in and gets it edited and approved, and so that this information can be shared with the world. But because we're going to be making some special announcements. There's been a lot of work going on behind the scenes. My friend Hunter's son Juan has moved to Louisville a year ago, and so he and I are presenting a panel. I'm talking about Hunter and his mother Virginia, who at Hunter's request, I started watching out for Virginia towards the end of her life and became dear friends with her. And so I'm presenting a piece on Hunter and the post office and death threats and the FBI and the Dalai Lama and Virginia Thompson. And Juan is going to give a talk about his roots and exploring his roots here in Louisville, Kentucky. Virginia is buried in Cave Hill Cemetery, which is 4 houses from where we are doing this interview in my writing studio at 919 Cherokee Road. And Juan has an apartment just as close in the other direction on Broadway from the main entrance to Cave Hill Cemetery, where Muhammad Ali, one of my heroes and one of Hunter's heroes, is buried. So Juan is exploring his roots here, and he's going to be a big part of Gonzo Fest. And Juan and Nick Storm, who's in his 8th year of working on a documentary, Outlaw Poet, a documentary on Ron Whitehead, supposed to come out in fall of 2018. Nick is working in conjunction with Jim Blanton and the library, including the foundation, to create, and it's probably already done it, the Hunter S. Thompson Foundation. And so we're working to, I said, look, let's do for Louisville, for the city of Louisville, and for the world, what the Ali Center has done for Muhammad Ali. Let's create a Hunter S. Thompson Center here in Louisville. And so big announcements are going to be made in relation to the library and the new Virginia and Hunter S. Thompson North Wing of the Louisville Free Public Library, which will be devoted to the life and works of Hunter S. Thompson, and there's some stuff going on with the archives, with the J.B. Speed Art Museum, with Ralph Steadman. Announcements are going to be made, and we'll save that for another interview. There's some big stuff going on there. So, but that's the basics of why. To answer your question, life is a tangent and all things show it. I thought so once, but now I know it. And so you asked me a question. My kids, once they got grown up, I got 3 kids, 7 grandkids, and 2 godchildren in Iceland where I lived for 2 years. My kids, when they got grown up, they said, when they were kids and they brought a new friend over to the house, whatever you do, don't ask Dad a question, because if you do, we won't have time to play. So you just ask me one question and I'll answer all your other questions in that one. So I'm sure I did some of that with that. So
You certainly did.
that's what's going on with Gonzo Fest, some of it.
Well, I'll tell you what's ironic is that about 10 years ago I was living hand to mouth and I applied for a job at the library, and the people at the library loved me. The city said no because I had felonies.
That's great.
They thought I was going to rob their books.
That's great. I'm sure Hunter would love that.
Yeah, I think he would.
Yeah.
Ron, you co-founded Gonzo Fest. Tell me how it has evolved to finally find a home at the Louisville Free Public Library, which you pretty much answered earlier, where Hunter's mother worked as a librarian for years.
Yeah. We've covered that. Okay. Next question.
Getting to the meat of things, there is a magic to good writing that Hunter captured as he indicted his subjects. Do you think it's magic or practice that illuminates Hunter's works?
I think it's a combination of both, magic and practice. Hunter, in 1970, Hunter ran for sheriff of Aspen, and a film is being made about that right now. And he also, that's 1970 is when he birthed Gonzo as a writing style that has transformed the face of journalism and of writing in general. With the Kentucky Derby is decadent and depraved, and that's where he and Ralph Steadman met for the first time. I was honored to be the inductor for Hunter into the Kentucky Journalism Writers Hall of Fame. And so Hunter's come a long way in his home state. You know, he was pretty much run out of town when he graduated from high school, right before he wasn't allowed to go to graduation at Male High School because he'd gotten into trouble. And he grew up in a neighborhood with a lot of rich friends. Their parents were rich. And so he and some of his friends were arrested, and Hunter turned out to be the scapegoat, and he was given the option of either staying in jail, maybe going to prison, or joining the military. And he decided to join the Air Force, and it's on the history books. He went to Florida, and he became the journalist, the sports writer for Elgin Air Force Base. And when he left there, all of the officers a group of officers stood and clapped, applauded as he drove off, happy that he was gone, because he stirred up so much shit. And so, but he went on to become famous from there. And it started with his book on the Hells Angels, which nobody had the balls to write a book about the Hells Angels, and the nation had asked him to write about the Hells Angels, and he did. And it's one of the most brilliant pieces of journalistic writing ever. And so shortly thereafter, 1970, a couple years later, comes the Kentucky Derby is decadent and depraved. And the big thing what is Gonzo? Well, Hunter did what quantum physics did for science. Quantum physics built the bridge between the material and spiritual worlds, science and religion. It proved that the person doing the experiment changes the results of the experiment through their thinking and their energy. And Hunter realized, and this is pulled the rug out from under the scientific method, as did Hunter for writing and journalism. And yes, other people had started the process. Burroughs with the cut-up technique, and which he developed. Well, I'm not going to go into that now. So Hunter decided that one of the basic tenets of science of writing was a lie, of journalism was a lie. The idea that the journalist, the writer, could be objective about their subject. There's no way. So he decided that he was going to go all the way, which Hunter always did when he made his mind up to do something, and he put the journalist, the writer, into the story, and they could become the protagonist or antagonist, the anti-hero, whatever label you want to place on them. So he threw out the notion of objectivity in journalism, and thereby developed Gonzo in 1970. And he also told the story he told what he thought about the rich folks who ruled Louisville, who still do, and so his return to Louisville took a long time. He always had a love-hate relationship with Louisville. He loved the Highlands. There was so much about this town, and it is a town. What I like about Louisville is that I've been invited, I've traveled, poetry's taken this farm boy all over the world. But I choose to live in Louisville for a number of reasons, and one is it's a friendly place. I can get to the airport in 10 minutes, and it has the best qualities of the city and of the country. I can get into the country in 20 minutes and be out in the middle of nature in no time. And Hunter liked that too, but it still has its ruling elite. And I don't do well, like Hunter, with authority. I break down. I'm an iconoclast by birth. I destroy. I do all I can to destroy the symbols of authority and authority itself. I don't need nor do I want anybody telling me what the fuck to do. And so my band and I are going to be playing at Gonzo Fest. We're one of the featured bands at Gonzo Fest. The Storm Generation Band. I lived in Iceland for 2 years. I was nearly killed climbing the Viking Mountain. And this legendary mountain, my friend Olafur Gunnarsson, Iceland's leading novelist, he's an advisor for the TV program The Vikings. Check it out. And so after I was nearly blown off the Viking Mountain, I wrote the Storm Generation Manifesto. So anyway, I'm going to be performing that, and with my band, the Storm Generation Band, we're releasing our new Dragons album at Gonzo Fest. And but this is one piece, and that I'm going to be performing. And Hunter, as much as anything, was an anarchist politically. Neither a Democrat, both the Democratic Party and the Republican parties have gone down the drains as far as I'm concerned. The Democrats are now what the Republicans used to be, and the Republicans have become presently fascist, period. And so I'm an Abraham Lincoln Republican. In 1863, he signed the Emancipation Proclamation freeing the slaves. I'm a Franklin Delano Roosevelt Democrat. In 1935, he signed the Social Security Act, giving the working class the only retirement most of us will ever have. I'm a Benjamin Franklin Independent, that eccentric genius who more than anyone birthed the United States and those precious documents, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights, on which it still barely stands. But But more than anything, I'm a Kentucky farm boy, poet, anarchist. The only government for me is the government of individual responsibility and helping my neighbors. I don't like governments and I don't like politics, but I'm not naive. We live in a political world, so I stay tuned. I get involved. I speak out. I take action. Shithouse manifesto. Poets, come out of your toilets. You've been holed up too long playing with yourselves. You're wasting away. All olfactory sensations dead. What with your head now situated on your posterior, one-eyed cyclopean peering down into midnight, bottom of the outhouse. And it's time to throw away the corn cobs and Sears catalogs and walk back out into the barnyards, the open pastures of the world where animals and people and flowers still bloom, where the sun still shines through the moon at midnight. In that other world you've lost until now, it's high time to wake up, pull your sad face and every other hanging down part of you out of that stinking, forlorn, lost world. You'll be fertilizer soon enough. For now, it's time to reconstruct who you are, your lifetime, to check out of the amnesia motel and get back on the highway 61 or 66 or 69 and finally say goodbye to those lonesome, lost blue pieces of who you used to be and say hello to this yellow sunrise post-world where the crows are grinning and the morning glories sing. And I'll be performing that piece with my band, and check out my band, the Storm Generation Band. They kick ass. We're going to be performing that and other works at Gonzo Fest Saturday, April the 14th, noon until 8 p.m. at the Louisville Free Public Library. You have one last question?
We had a couple of last questions.
Okay, ask me whatever the hell you want.
Okay. There are times, however, and this is one of them, when even being right feels wrong. What do you say, for instance, about a generation that has been taught that rain is poison and sex is death? If making love might be fatal, and if a cool spring breeze on any summer afternoon can turn a crystal blue lake into a puddle of black poison right in front of your eyes, there is not much left except TV and relentless masturbation. It's a strange world. Some people get rich and others eat shit and die. By Hunter S. Thompson. For me, this personifies Hunter's view of the world. It strikes me as his living dichotomy and disgust for what the world has become. What are your thoughts on such a sublime declaration?
Well, that's a poem. What Hunter had to say about it is a poem. And there's a big part of me certainly agrees with that. But there's more of a part of me that says, yes, that's true, but I refuse to stay in that place where, Hunter concluded the postscript to that poem for Hunter was suicide. And so we're born into this world either with a deep, rich history that we bring with us, if you believe in reincarnation, or tabula rasa, a blank slate, as some people believe, and we etch ourselves into being through our actions. If you read Soren Kierkegaard, the history of existentialism, the dominant philosophical system of the past decade and a half. And so when we begin to wake up in this world, we see the injustice we're surrounded with, the pain and the suffering created by power mongers. And the world's controlled by them now. From the Saudi sheiks to Vladimir Putin, this puppet Donald Trump, they're all over the world. And we could just say, fuck it, put a bullet to our heads and shoot ourselves if we got the courage, and it takes courage to commit suicide, or we do it the slow way with drinking too much, overdosing on heroin, the opiate epidemic. There are so many ways to die, the slow death, the quick death. But me, I was born a fucking optimist. So I'm looking every day for all the ways, the multitude of ways to enjoy life, the beauty of nature first and foremost. I grew up on a Kentucky wild nature farm. I am a farm boy, a wild nature boy. And so I walk out in the morning and I choose to hear the birds singing. And I choose to follow that path. I'm going to find the ways of beauty, the path of beauty in this world, despite the terror. And so I find them every day. And the creative imagination is the doorway to spirit realms. If you don't believe in spirit realms, that's fine too. The creative imagination is salvation from mundanity, from death and life. And so it took me 8 years to build a bridge from where I was to working jobs that I despised. And I've worked so many damn jobs, and I failed more than all the people I know put together. But I've always found ways to pick myself up and keep moving and live another day. And I searched until I found my dream, and I found it. And then I worked for 8 years to get from where I was, taking one step at a time to where I wanted to be. And for 28 years, I've been living and being my dream. For 20 years, I slept 2 and 3 hours a night. I drank 15 to 20 cups of coffee a day. I took 12 to 14 Excedrin till after 6 years, the aspirin, and it ate my stomach. And so I switched over to acetaminophen to help ease some of the pain. But for 28 years, I've been living and being my dream. And there's nothing like it. Nothing compares to living and being your dream. What is your dream? It's different for everybody. You got to find your own. And once you find your dream and you start living it, every day's a holiday. And is it going to be easy? Oh, hell no. Nothing's easy. But life's going to be worth living. You got it. I made that leap of faith from the river of death, faced with suicide, to a place where my life has meaning, and it's filled with joy and fun, and poetry. So I refuse to bow down to the power mongers. I will not bow down. I choose to go my own way, no matter what. No matter what, I'm going to be myself. And yeah, so what? So what are they going to do? Put a bullet in my head? I'll be singing when they do. Bring it on. You got another question?
I think in closing, I'd say you were friends with Hunter for a long time, who said of you, "I have long admired Ron Whitehead. He is crazy as 9 loons, and his poetry is a dazzling mix of folk wisdom and pure mathematics." I believe you have brought that quote to life, and I want to thank you for this interview. I want to thank you on behalf of IT, and it's really been a treat. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, IT. Thank you, folks everywhere. I hope to meet all of you one day soon, somewhere. Keep your heads up. Be strong.